My mother always preached that family comes first, yet she forgot betrayal often shares the same bloodline. As I walked out of the corporate building with my cardboard box, she waited in the parking lot, masking her triumph with fake concern. She thought getting me fired would secure her a free nanny for her 3 grandsons. She was wrong. My box did not just hold office supplies, it held a voice recorder that was still running. The game is just beginning. My name is Jordan Loxley, and at 28 years old, I had successfully carved out a kingdom of glass and steel that belonged solely to me. I was the youngest marketing director in the history of Ethers Corp., a title that came with a 6-figure salary, chronic sleep deprivation, and a sense of validation that no amount of motherly approval could ever equal. The office was my ecosystem. It was a sprawling, open-concept floor on the 42nd story of a skyscraper that pierced the clouds above the city. The air always smelled of ozone and expensive espresso, while others saw a high-pressure cooker that chewed up graduates and spat them out. I saw a chessboard. I moved pieces with precision. I lived for the metrics, the quarterly projections, and the adrenaline of a successful launch. My sanctuary away from this battlefield was a 600-square-foot apartment in Silver Lake. It was not a mansion. It was barely a 1-bedroom, if you were being generous with the definitions of architectural space, but it was mine. Every month, I signed a check for $3,200 for rent, and I did it with a smile. That money was not just for a roof over my head. It was a subscription fee for my sanity. It bought me silence. It bought me a front door with a deadbolt that my mother, Brenda, did not have a key to. My life was compartmentalized. There was Jordan the director, who commanded a team of 20 people and managed budgets in the millions. And then there was Jordan the daughter, a role I tried to keep dormant, like a virus in remission. The virus, however, had a habit of flaring up. My sister, Tiffany, was the golden child. She was 30 years old, married to a man whose ambition peaked at semi-professional fantasy football. And she was the mother of 3 boys, my nephews. I loved them. I truly did. But from a distance, they were a chaotic force of nature, a hurricane of sticky fingers and high-decibel screaming that Tiffany refused to discipline because she believed in gentle parenting. The problem was, Tiffany and my mother interpreted gentle parenting as letting the inmates run the asylum while they drank wine and complained about how hard their lives were. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. I was standing in the war room, surrounded by whiteboards covered in flowcharts for Project Horizon. Horizon was not just a project, it was the culmination of my entire career. It was a rebranding initiative that was going to redefine Ethers Corp in the global market. We were 48 hours away from the soft launch. My cortisol levels were spiking, my coffee was cold, and my focus was absolute. Then, my phone buzzed against the mahogany conference table. I glanced down. The screen lit up with the name Mom. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, a relentless vibration that drilled into my concentration. My assistant, Maya, gave me a sympathetic look from across the room. She knew. Everyone knew. I flipped the phone over. Face down. 5 minutes later, the landline on the wall chimed. It was the reception desk. "Ms. Loxley," the receptionist said, her voice tight. "I have a Brenda Loxley on the line. She says it is a medical emergency involving your sister. She says she called your cell 10 times. My blood ran cold. Emergency. The word cut through my professional armor. I excused myself, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, and took the call in the hallway. "Mom, is everyone okay? Is it the kids?" I asked, breathless. "Oh, finally," Brenda's voice came through, not frantic, but annoyed. "I thought you were dead. Do you know how rude it is to ignore your mother?" I leaned against the cold glass wall, squeezing my eyes shut. "You told the receptionist it was a medical emergency." "It is an emergency, Jordan," she snapped. "Tiffany is having a nervous breakdown. She needs a break. She and David found this incredible last-minute deal for a retreat in Cabo. It is for marriage counseling. They need this to save their family. They leave tomorrow morning at 6. I looked at my watch. Okay, and I need you to take the boys for 5 days. The silence that stretched between us was loud enough to fill the hallway. I laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound that lacked any humor. Mom, no, absolutely not. Excuse me? Her tone dropped an octave. It was the voice she used when I was 12 and refused to eat my peas. Did you just say no to your sister's happiness? I am saying no because I have a job. Mom, a very demanding job. I am launching Project Horizon in 2 days. I am sleeping 4 hours a night. I cannot watch 3 children under the age of 7 while running a department. You are being dramatic, Brenda scoffed. Just take a few days off. Use your sick leave. You are the boss, aren't you? What is the point of being a boss if you cannot take a break? Tiffany needs you. Family comes first. I cannot take sick leave when I'm not sick. That is fraud, and it is unprofessional, and I cannot abandon my team right before the biggest launch of the year. Hire a nanny. I will even send you $500 right now to help pay for one. A nanny. She spat the word out like a curse. Strangers in the house, absolutely not. We do not let strangers raise our blood. You are so selfish. Jordan, always have been. You sit there in your fancy high-rise, looking down on us, throwing money at problems instead of offering love. Money is not everything. Family is eternal. Your job. That company would replace you in a second if you drop dead. We are the only ones who truly care about you. My job is my life. Mom, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and exhaustion. It is how I pay my bills. It is how I sent you that check for your roof repair last month. Do not guilt-trip me. The answer is no. You will regret this, she said, her voice turning dangerously soft. You think you are so secure. You think you are better than Tiffany because you have a career and she has a family. But pride comes before a fall. Jordan, remember that. She hung up. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the receiver. My hands were shaking. I forced myself to take 3 deep breaths. Inhale, exhale. I could not let her get to me. This was the same old song and dance. I returned to the war room, apologized to my team, and threw myself back into the data. By 2 p.m, I had almost put the conversation behind me. The presentation deck was finalized. The media buy was approved. I felt the familiar rush of competence returning. Then, my office door opened. Mr. Sterling did not knock. He never knocked. But he also rarely came to my office. As the CEO of Ethers Corp., he existed in the penthouse suite, a deity who only descended for board meetings and quarterly reviews. He was a man of iron posture and zero tolerance for incompetence. He hated liars more than he hated losing money. Jordan, he said. He did not sit. He stood in the doorway, his presence sucking the oxygen out of the room. Pack your things. I blinked, my fingers freezing over the keyboard. I beg your pardon? You are terminated, effective immediately. The world tilted on its axis. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to roar in my ears. I stood up slowly, my knees feeling like water. Mr. Sterling, I do not understand. The Horizon launch is in 48 hours. My performance reviews have been stellar. If this is about the budget variance in Q3, I can explain. This is not about the budget, he cut me off, his voice quiet and lethal. I received a phone call 20 minutes ago from a very reliable source, a medical professional. In fact, I frowned, confusion warring with panic. A medical professional. They informed me of your condition, Sterling said, looking at me with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. I run a clean ship. Jordan, I do not tolerate substance abuse in my executive suite, and I certainly do not tolerate the erratic, violent behavior towards subordinates that was described to me. We have a zero-tolerance policy for employees who are a danger to the workplace environment. Substance abuse. I almost shouted the words. Mr. Sterling, I have never touched a drug in my life. I drink 1 glass of wine a week. Who called you? This is insane. You have to let me explain. Let me take a drug test. I will take one right now. The source detailed a history of instability that you failed to disclose, he said, checking his watch as if this destruction of my life was merely a scheduling inconvenience. And frankly, the frantic way you are reacting right now only corroborates the report. Security is on the way. Do not touch your computer. Do not speak to your team. You have 10 minutes to clear your personal effects. But who called? I pleaded, tears stinging my eyes not from sadness, but from the sheer, burning injustice of it. You cannot fire me based on an anonymous call. It was not anonymous, Sterling said, turning his back on me. And the decision is final. You are a liability. Aetheris Corp does not keep liabilities. He walked out. 2 minutes later, a security guard named Paul, a man I had exchanged pleasantries with every morning for 3 years, walked in. He refused to meet my eyes. He held a standard-issue cardboard box. "I am sorry, Ms. Loxley," Paul mumbled. "Procedure." I moved through the next 15 minutes like a ghost. I put my framed degree in the box. I put my lucky stapler in the box. I put the photo of me and my friends from college in the box. I did not look at Maya. I could feel the eyes of the entire floor boring into my back. The whispers started before I even reached the elevators. Fired. Escorted out. Drugs. Did you hear my career, my reputation? The life I had built. Brick by painful brick, it was gone. Vaporized in the span of a single afternoon based on a lie I could not even identify. Paul escorted me to the lobby and then to the revolving doors. "Take care, Ms. Loxley," he said, effectively barring me from re-entering the kingdom I used to help rule. I stepped out into the blinding afternoon sun. The heat of the city asphalt hit me instantly, contrasting the artificial chill of the office. I clutched the cardboard box to my chest, feeling a scream building in my throat. I wanted to throw the box into traffic. I wanted to fall to my knees and weep, but I did neither, because a silver sedan pulled up to the curb the exact second my heels touched the sidewalk. It was not a taxi, it was a Buick. My mother's Buick. The window rolled down with a smooth electric hum. Brenda sat in the driver's seat. She was wearing her Sunday best, a floral blouse that clashed with the malicious gleam in her eyes. She did not look surprised to see me standing there with a box of personal belongings in the middle of a workday. She did not ask why I was outside. She did not ask why I was crying. She smiled. It was a terrifying, triumphant smile. "See," she said, her voice cheerful, as if commenting on the weather. "I told you that job was not stable. Corporate loyalty is a myth. Jordan, I tried to warn you." My brain short-circuited. The timing, the lack of surprise, the medical professional Sterling had mentioned. The pieces clicked together with the force of a sledgehammer. "You," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You called him." Brenda waved her hand dismissively, popping the trunk. "Get in. We have to hurry. Tiffany is waiting to drop off the boys, and she does not want to miss her flight. You have plenty of free time now." She thought she had won. She thought she had broken me. She thought that by stripping me of my title, she had reduced me to what she always wanted me to be, a servant. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me, and for the first time in my life, I did not see a mother. I saw a target. I opened the passenger door and slid in, placing the box on my lap. Inside that box, buried under the stapler and the photo frame, my phone was sitting face up. I had started the voice memo app the moment Paul walked into my office to record the interaction for legal reasons. I had never turned it off. "Drive," I said quietly. "That is a good girl," Brenda cooed, merging into traffic. "You will see. This is a blessing in disguise. Family is the only thing that matters." I stared out the window as the Aetheris Tower shrank in the rearview mirror. I was not crying anymore. I was calculating. She was right about one thing. This was a blessing, because now I had nothing left to lose, and a person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous creature on earth. "Yes, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Family comes first." The interior of the Buick smelled of lavender air freshener and stale chewing gum. a sensory combination that had nauseated me since childhood. Now, it felt like the olfactory backdrop to a funeral. My funeral. The air conditioning was blasting at full force, drawing the tear tracks on my cheeks into tight, itchy lines, but the cold inside the car did nothing to quell the burning heat of humiliation radiating from my chest. Brenda was humming. It was a soft, tuneless sound, a vibration of contentment that rattled in her throat as she navigated the afternoon traffic. She tapped her fingers against the steering wheel in time to a rhythm only she could hear. She looked lighter, younger even, as if the destruction of my livelihood had acted as a potent anti-aging serum. "You know, Jordan," she said, breaking the silence without looking at me. "I have always believed that God never shuts a door without opening a window. You were working yourself to the bone at that place. It was not healthy. Look at you. You are pale. You have circles under your eyes. A mother notices these things." I stared straight ahead, clutching the cardboard box so tightly my knuckles were white. "I was pale because I worked indoors, Mom, and I had circles under my eyes because I was managing a $20 million budget. That is gone now. Money, money, money," she tutted, shaking her head. "That is all you ever talk about. It is gauche. Real wealth is time. Jordan, time with family, time to breathe. You should be thanking the universe for this intervention." "Intervention," I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. I turned my head slowly to look at her side profile. "Is that what we are calling it? Because it felt a lot like an execution." She ignored me. Merging onto the highway, I realized then that we were not heading toward Silver Lake. My apartment was west. We were heading north, toward the sprawling, manicured suburbs where Tiffany lived. "Where are we going?" I asked, though a sinking feeling in my gut told me I already knew the answer. "My apartment is the other way." "Do not be silly," Brenda said breezily. "You are in no state to be alone right now. Besides, Tiffany is waiting. Her flight is at 6 in the morning, which means they need to leave for the airport by 4 to beat the traffic. You need to get settled in before they go." "Settled in?" I asked. "Mom, I just lost my job less than an hour ago. I need to go home. I need to call a lawyer. I need to update my resume. I do not need to go to Tiffany's house." Brenda let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "A lawyer? For what?" "To sue the man who fired you for being unstable. That will only prove his point. And a resume, Jordan. Please, you are damaged goods right now. Who is going to hire you after a termination like that? No. You are going to come to your sister's house. You are going to help her. And you are going to heal. That is what families do." She exited the highway, the tires crunching over the familiar suburban asphalt. We pulled into the driveway of a 2-story beige house that looked exactly like every other 2-story beige house on the block, before the car even came to a complete stop. The front door flew open. The noise hit us before the heat did. It was a cacophony of shrieking, a high-pitched wail of 3 distinct voices that sounded like a siren. My nephews, Hunter, age 7, and the twins, Jax and Leo, aged 4, they were running circles around a pile of luggage on the porch, swinging plastic swords and screaming battle cries. Tiffany stepped out behind them. She looked immaculate. She was wearing a white linen sundress and a wide-brimmed hat. Her sunglasses perched on top of her perfectly highlighted hair. She looked like she was stepping out of a travel magazine, a stark contrast to my grim, business casual attire and the box of failure on my lap. Brenda parked the car and killed the engine. "We are here," she announced cheerfully. I did not move. "Mom, take me home, please." "Get out of the car, Jordan," she said, her voice dropping the cheerful facade for a split second, revealing the steel beneath. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself and be useful for once." She opened her door and stepped out, embracing Tiffany with a squeal of delight. I watched them through the windshield. They looked like a picture-perfect mother and daughter. I was the dark smudge in the corner of the frame. I took a deep breath, checked that my phone in the box was still recording, and stepped out into the humidity. Tiffany did not look at my face. She did not look at the box. She did not ask how I was. She walked straight up to me and thrust a laminated sheet of paper into my chest. "Finally," Tiffany sighed, looking at her Apple Watch. "You are 20 minutes late. The twins need a snack immediately, but no sugar because they get feral. Hunter has soccer practice at 4:30, so you need to leave in exactly 10 minutes if you want to make it on time. Here is the schedule. It is color-coded. Do not deviate from it. Jordan. Last time Mom watched them, she let them watch TV for 3 hours and it ruined their sleep cycle for a week." I looked down at the laminate. It was terrifyingly detailed. 7:00 a.m. Organic oatmeal, no lumps. 2:00 p.m. Sensory play, Montessori method, only. "Tiffany," I said, my voice flat. "I got fired today." She paused, adjusting the strap of her designer carry-on bag. She looked at me then, really looked at me. But there was no sympathy in her eyes. There was only a vague annoyance, as if I had told her it might rain during her beach vacation. "I heard," she said. "Mom texted me. Look, I am sorry. Okay, that sucks. But honestly, Jordan, maybe it is a sign. You were always so obsessed with that job. It was creepy. Now you have time to focus on things that actually matter, like your nephews. They have missed you." "They do not even know who I am," I said. "I see them twice a year." "Well, whose fault is that?" Tiffany snapped. "You are the one who is always too busy with meetings and deadlines. Now you are not busy. Problem solved. David is loading the car. We need to go." She turned to walk away, dismissing me as if I were the hired help she had been complaining about for months. "Wait," I said. The word came out louder than I intended. Echoing off the siding of the house, I looked from Tiffany to Brenda. Brenda was busy corralling the twins, cooing at them while they hit her legs with the plastic swords. The tableau was too perfect. The timing was too precise. "Mom," I said. Brenda looked up, feigning innocence. "What is it now?" "Jordan, we are on a schedule." "How did you know?" I asked. I walked closer to her, stepping over a discarded tricycle. "When I walked out of that building, you were there. You were waiting at the curb, not in a parking spot, not circling the block. You were right there at the door." Brenda blinked. "I told you." "Mother's intuition." "No," I shook my head. "Intuition does not give you a timestamp. Mr. Sterling fired me at 2:15. I walked out at 2:30. You were there at 2:30. It takes 45 minutes to get from here to downtown with no traffic, which means you left here at 1:45, before I was even called into his office." The air in the driveway seemed to grow heavy. The shrieking of the children faded into the background noise of my own pulse pounding in my ears. "You are being paranoid," Tiffany said, stepping in between us. "Mom just wanted to surprise you for lunch or something." "For lunch?" I laughed. A harsh, brittle sound. "Mom has never visited me for lunch in 5 years. She hates the city. She hates driving in the city. And she certainly does not show up with an empty trunk and a speech about doors closing right as I get terminated." I turned my gaze full on Brenda. She was not shrinking away. She was standing taller, her chin lifted in a gesture of defiance I knew well. It was the look she gave when she had done something terrible, but had convinced herself it was righteous. "You knew," I said. "You knew I was getting fired because you made it happen." Brenda sighed. A long, exaggerated exhalation of breath. She smoothed the front of her blouse. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. Jordan, it is unbecoming." "Did you call him?" I asked. "Mr. Sterling said he got a call from a medical professional. He said they told him I was on drugs. He said they told him I was violent. I did what I had to do." Brenda exploded. The sudden volume of her voice made the twins stop hitting her. "Someone had to save you from yourself. You were drowning, Jordan, drowning in that toxic corporate world. You were losing your soul. I called him because I love you. I am your mother. It is my job to protect you." "Protect me." My voice was a whisper. "You told my boss I was a drug addict. That is a lie. A malicious, career-ending lie. Do you have any idea what you have done? You have blacklisted me. In my industry, a reputation like that is a death sentence. Oh, please. Brenda waved her hand. It is just a job. There are other jobs. Jobs at libraries, jobs at bakeries. Nice, quiet jobs where you can actually meet a husband instead of marrying a spreadsheet. Why? I demanded. Why would you do this? Just to teach me a lesson, to humble me. Brenda looked at Tiffany. A look passed between them, a conspiratorial glance that lasted less than a second. But it told me everything. It was not just for you, Jordan, Brenda said, her voice dropping to a reasonable, explanatory tone, as if she were explaining why we needed to buy generic brand cereal. Tiffany needs help. Good help is impossible to find these days. Do you know how much nannies charge $25 an hour? It is robbery. And they are strangers. We cannot trust strangers with the boys. So you got me fired to be a free babysitter? I asked, feeling like the ground was dissolving beneath my feet. Not just a babysitter, Tiffany chimed in, looking defensive. Family. You are family. And it is not like you are doing it for nothing. We are letting you stay here. You can eat our food. And, Brenda added, a smug smile creeping onto her face, Tiffany made me a promise. If I could help her solve her childcare problem for this trip and for the summer, she would finally pay for the roof repairs on my house, the repairs you refused to pay for. Jordan. I stared at them. The logic was so twisted, so perfectly narcissistic, that it was almost breathless in its scope. Let me get this straight, I said slowly, ensuring every word was enunciated clearly for the recording device sitting in the box 5 feet away. You called the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. You impersonated a doctor. You lied and said I was addicted to drugs and mentally unstable. You did this specifically to get me fired so that I would have no income and nowhere to go, forcing me to babysit Tiffany's children for free. And in exchange, Tiffany is using the money she saved on a nanny to pay for your new roof. When you say it like that, it sounds ugly, Brenda sniffed. I prefer to think of it as a reallocation of resources. You were making too much money and doing too little good with it. Tiffany is raising the future. I am preserving the family home. You were just hoarding. I was paying my rent, I screamed. I could not hold it back anymore. I was building a life. A selfish life, Brenda yelled back. Look at you. You are alone. You have nobody, and now you really have nobody. You have no job. You have no reference. You have no money coming in. You are nothing without us. Jordan, nothing. We are the only ones who will take you in. We are the only ones who will tolerate you. She stepped closer, invading my personal space. Her eyes were hard. So here's the reality check. Little girl, you are going to pick up that schedule. You are going to watch these boys. You are going to do it with a smile. Because if you walk away right now, where do you go? Back to your empty apartment to starve. You need us. I looked at Tiffany. She was checking her phone, bored by the argument. I looked at Brenda. She was glowing with the power she held over me. She had engineered my destruction and expected me to thank her for the rubble. She was right about one thing. If I walked away now, I would just be another unemployed woman screaming into the void. They would spin the narrative. I would be the crazy sister who abandoned them. I would be the addict who lost her mind. But if I stayed, I was inside. I was in the house. I had access to their conversations, their documents, their lives. I looked at the cardboard box on the lawn. The red light on the recording app was not visible, but I knew it was pulsing. Recording. I took a long, shuddering breath. I let my shoulders slump. I let the fire die out of my eyes, replacing it with the dull, glazed look of the defeated. You are right, I said softly. Brenda's face relaxed. She smiled, a predator who had successfully taken down its prey. I knew you would see reason. I have nowhere else to go, I continued, my voice trembling just enough to sell the performance. I cannot pay my rent next month without a paycheck. I guess I have to do this. That is my girl, Brenda said. patting my cheek. Her hand felt like ice. Family helps family. You will see, Jordan, this is the best thing that could have happened to you. Yes, I said. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for opening my eyes. Tiffany clapped her hands together. Great. Glad that is settled. The keys to the minivan are on the counter. Pizza money is in the jar. But try to make them eat the quinoa salad in the fridge first. We have to fly. Bye. Boys. Mommy loves you. Be good for Aunt Jordan. Tiffany and her husband, David, who had emerged from the house carrying the last suitcase and looking like he was trying to become invisible, loaded into their SUV. Brenda waved at them as they backed out of the driveway. I will be staying here too, of course. Brenda said to me, to supervise. I do not want you relapsing on whatever imaginary drugs I told your boss you were taking. She chuckled at her own joke. Go bring your box inside. Jordan, put it in the guest room, the one in the basement. The boys are using the upstairs guest room for their fort. Okay, Mom, I said. I walked over to my box. I picked it up. As I walked past Brenda into the house, I clutched the box tight. She thought she had broken a wild horse. She did not realize she had just invited a Trojan horse into her living room. Welcome home, Jordan, Brenda called out from the porch. It is good to be here, I whispered to myself. I walked into the cool, dark hallway of my sister's house. The game had officially changed. I was no longer the victim. I was the spy. And they had just given me the keys to the kingdom I was going to burn to the ground. The basement guest room smelled of mildew and unfulfilled promises. I woke up at 6 a.m, not to an alarm, but to the sound of footsteps thumping on the floorboards above my head. My new reality as a servant had begun. Tiffany and her husband were halfway to Cabo by now, sipping mimosas in first class, leaving me in the domestic trenches with 3 children and the architect of my destruction. At 8 o'clock sharp, Brenda appeared in the kitchen wearing a plush white robe that belonged to Tiffany. She looked rested, while I felt like I had gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. I am going to the spa, Brenda announced, slicing a banana into her yogurt. Tiffany left a gift certificate on the counter. It would be a sin to let it expire. I need to decompress. The stress of your situation has been very hard on my heart. Jordan. Of course, Mom, I said, wiping oatmeal off the counter. You go. I have got the boys. Make sure Hunter does his summer reading, she commanded, and do not let the twins eat paste. She swept out of the house 20 minutes later in the Buick, heading for a day of mud wraps and cucumber water. As soon as the garage door rumbled shut, the clock started ticking. I had 4 hours. I turned to the boys. Hunter, who was 10 years old, older and sharper than I had given him credit for, was glued to his iPad on the sofa. The twins were building a tower of blocks. Okay, guys, I said. Aunt Jordan is going to play a game called Quiet Time. If you can stay in the living room and not kill each other for 1 hour, I will order pizza for lunch. Deal. Deal, Hunter mumbled without looking up. I sprinted upstairs to Tiffany's home office. It was a chaotic room, a testament to my sister's disorganized mind. Papers were stacked in teetering piles on the desk. I knew Brenda. She was a hoarder of documents, but she was paranoid about keeping them at her own house in case the government came looking. She often stored her important files at Tiffany's, claiming her house was not secure enough. I started with the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. It was locked. I reached up to the top of the door frame. Tiffany had hidden the key there since high school. It was still there. I unlocked the drawer and started flipping through the manila folders. Most of it was junk warranties for toasters bought in 2015, old tax returns. But then I found a red folder labeled Mom, Personal. I opened it. The first thing I saw was a stack of credit card statements. Brenda was $25,000 in debt. She had maxed out 3 cards at casinos and online shopping channels, but it was the document underneath that made the air leave my lungs. It was a loan agreement from a company called Quick Cash Lenders. The amount was $15,000. The interest rate was predatory at 24%. The borrower's name was Jordan Loxley. I stared at the signature at the bottom. It was a shaky, clumsy attempt to copy my autograph. The date was 3 months ago. My mother had not just gotten me fired. She had stolen my identity. She had taken out a high-interest loan in my name, likely to pay off the minimums on her other debts, and she was planning to let me drown in the default. This was not just toxic family dynamics anymore. This was a felony. I pulled out my phone and took high-resolution photos of every page. I put the folder back exactly as I found it and locked the drawer. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a cold, crystalline rage. I went back downstairs. The boys were still alive. I retreated to the basement bathroom and locked the door. I needed to make a call, but not to a lawyer yet. I needed to confirm the weapon used to kill my career. I dialed Maya, my former assistant at Etherius Corp. She picked up on the second ring. "Jordan," she whispered, "I cannot be talking to you. If Sterling sees me." "He won't," I said, keeping my voice low. "Maya, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Sterling said he got a call from a medical professional. Who was it?" There was a pause. "I shouldn't know this," Maya said nervously, "but I saw the transcript on his desk when I brought in his coffee." The caller identified herself as Dr. Arlene Thorne. She claimed to be a clinical psychologist who has been treating you for 2 years. "Dr. Arlene Thorne," I repeated, memorizing the name. "And what did she say?" "She said, Jordan, it is awful. She said you have a severe dependency on methamphetamines and that you have been hiding violent episodes. She told him that under Section 504 or something, he had a duty to protect the staff. She used all this medical jargon. She said you were a ticking time bomb." "Did she leave a number?" "No," Maya said. "It was a blocked ID, but Sterling bought it. He said she sounded extremely authoritative." "Jordan, tell me it isn't true." "It is not," I said firmly. "Maya, thank you. You just saved my life." I hung up. Impersonating a doctor, defamation per se, fraud. I needed legal counsel, and I needed it immediately, but I was stuck with 3 children. I looked at the schedule Tiffany gave me. 10:30 a.m., outdoor enrichment. I packed the boys into the minivan. "We are going on a field trip," I announced. I drove to the massive shopping mall downtown. On the 3rd floor, there was a high-end drop-in childcare center called Little Geniuses. It cost $40 an hour per kid. I handed over my credit card, praying it hadn't been canceled yet. It went through. "I will be back in 90 minutes, I told the receptionist. I took the elevator up to the 30th floor of the adjacent office tower. The directory listed Thorne Associates, employment law, no relation to the fake doctor, which was a delicious irony. Marcus Thorne was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite and dressed in Italian silk. He listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes with a fountain pen that probably cost more than my car. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair. "This is compelling, Ms. Loxley," he said, his voice deep and measured. "If what you say is true, we are looking at a multi-pronged lawsuit. First, defamation per se. Accusing an employee of drug addiction and professional incompetence is damaging to your trade. We do not even need to prove monetary damages, though we have plenty. Second, tortious interference with contractual relations. She intentionally acted to sever your employment. Third, intentional infliction of emotional distress." He tapped the pen on the desk. "And then there is the criminal aspect, identity theft regarding the loan, and impersonating a medical professional to facilitate fraud. That is a felony." "So we can sue her?" I asked. "We can," Marcus said. "But we have a problem. Evidence. Right now, we have your word against hers. The loan document is good for the fraud charge, but it does not prove she made the call to Sterling. She could claim someone else impersonated the doctor. Sterling's testimony is hearsay unless we can prove the voice on the phone was hers. We need a smoking gun, a recording, a confession. Something that undeniably links Brenda Loxley to the persona of Dr. Arlene Thorne." "She is arrogant," I said, thinking of her humming in the car. "She likes to brag." "Then let her brag," Marcus said. Get it on tape. If you bring me a recording of her admitting she made that call, or better yet, her doing the voice, I can destroy her, and I can force Etherisk Corp to settle for wrongful termination because they failed to perform due diligence before firing a director based on a prank call. I checked my watch. I have to go. The meter is running on the kids. I picked up the boys and drove back to the house, stopping for pizza on the way to buy their silence. We pulled into the driveway at 2 p.m. Brenda's Buick was already there. I walked inside, bracing myself. Brenda was lounging on the sofa, her skin glowing from a facial. She looked up as we entered. "You were gone a long time," she observed, eyeing the pizza boxes. "I hope you did not feed them junk food." "It is cauliflower crust," I lied smoothly. "We went to the park. I just needed to clear my head. Mom, I am just so scared about the future." I slumped onto the armchair opposite her, channeling every ounce of pathetic energy I could muster. "I do not know what I am going to do. My career is over. Sterling will never give me a reference." Brenda smiled, a satisfied, reptilian curling of her lips. "Oh, hush now. You have a roof over your head. You have family. That job was killing you anyway. You should be grateful it ended quickly." Hunter was sitting on the floor near Brenda's feet, tapping away on his iPad. He was ignoring us, or so I thought. "I guess," I sighed. "It is just the way he fired me. He said a doctor called him. I do not even have a doctor." Brenda chuckled. It was a dark, amused sound. "Doctors are overrated. Sometimes you just need a mother's touch." She picked up her magazine, dismissing me. I stood up to take the pizza to the kitchen. As I passed Hunter, I glanced down at his screen. He wasn't playing Minecraft. He was editing a video. I froze. On the screen was a shaky video clip. It showed Brenda. She was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a glass of wine. She was laughing. I leaned in closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Hunter," I whispered, "what is that?" Hunter looked up, annoyed. "It is for my TikTok. I am making a compilation of Grandma being weird. Can I see?" He shrugged and handed me the iPad. I pressed play. The video was dated 2 days ago. Brenda was on the phone, clearly unaware she was being filmed. She was holding her nose slightly, pitching her voice lower and more resonant. "Yes, Mr. Sterling," the Brenda in the video said, her voice sounding eerily professional, stripping away her usual shrillness. "This is Dr. Arlene Thorne. I am afraid the prognosis is quite severe. Methamphetamines trigger acute paranoia in high-stress environments." She paused, listening to the person on the other line, then grinned at the wall. "Violent? Yes, absolutely. I would recommend immediate removal from the premises for the safety of your staff." The video cut to Brenda hanging up the phone and bursting into laughter. She looked at the empty room and said, "Dr. Thorne prescribes a dose of humility for Miss High and Mighty." I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the device. This was it. The smoking gun. The silver bullet. The nuclear launch code. "Hunter," I said, my voice trembling. "Did you post this yet?" "No," he said. "I need to add the funny sound effects." "Don't," I said. "Hunter, listen to me carefully. I will buy you the new PlayStation 5, the one with the disk drive. I will buy it today. But you have to airdrop that video to me right now, and then you have to delete it from your iPad and the recently deleted folder. You cannot show it to Grandma. It is our secret." Hunter's eyes went wide. He was 10 years old. He understood the currency of bribery perfectly. "The one with the game bundle." "Yes," I promised. "And a headset." He tapped the screen. "Airdrop Aunt Jordan." A blue circle spun on my phone screen. Received. I had it. I had the loan fraud. I had the defamation. I had the impersonation. I looked over at Brenda, who was reading an article about 10 ways to lose belly fat, completely oblivious that her grandson had just sold her out for a gaming console. "Is everything okay in there?" she called out. "Everything is perfect." "Mom," I called back, clutching my phone like a lifeline. I am just heating up the pizza. The victim had left the building. The hunter had just loaded her rifle. The week that followed Tiffany's return from Cabo was a masterclass in domestic servitude, while my sister and her husband nursed their sunburns and regaled us with stories of tequila tastings and sunset yacht cruises. I was knee-deep in laundry, dirty dishes, and the chaotic management of 3 boys who had seemingly forgotten the concept of an indoor voice. I had become invisible. I was no longer Jordan Loxley, marketing director. I was just Aunt Jordan, the entity responsible for wiping noses, making organic macaroni and cheese, and ensuring the twins did not stick forks into electrical outlets. Tiffany, glowing with a tan that cost more than my first car, spent her days lounging on the patio, scrolling through Instagram and complaining about jet lag. Brenda, meanwhile, strutted around the house like a peacock that had just successfully defended its territory. She hovered over me while I scrubbed the kitchen counters, offering unhelpful critiques on my technique. "You missed a spot," she would say, pointing a manicured nail at a microscopic crumb. "Honestly, Jordan, if you put this much effort into your actual job, maybe you would not have been fired." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. "You are right, Mom. I am learning." By Wednesday, the atmosphere shifted from passive-aggressive to predatory. I was folding towels in the living room when Brenda and Tiffany cornered me. It was a coordinated ambush. "Jordan," Brenda started, her tone serious. "We need to talk about finances." I paused, a towel in midair. "Okay. You have been here a week," Brenda said, crossing her arms. "You are eating our food, you are using our electricity, and let us be honest, you are not exactly bringing in any income. We cannot support a grown woman indefinitely. It is not fair to Tiffany's family." "I am babysitting," I pointed out gently. "Full-time? That saves Tiffany about $600 a week." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "That is different. You are family. You should want to help, but rent is real. Mom mentioned you still have some savings left from your previous life." "I do," I said cautiously. "Well," Brenda said, "I think it is only right that you contribute. You should transfer whatever you have left to me. I will manage it for the household expenses. Think of it as room and board. Plus, it will stop you from wasting it on whatever it is you spend money on. Drugs, alcohol." She raised an eyebrow, daring me to challenge the lie she had invented. I looked at them. The greed was radiating off them like heat waves. They wanted to strip me clean. They wanted to ensure I had zero financial independence so I would be tethered to this house, a permanent indentured servant. "You are right," I said, dropping my head in feigned shame. "I have about $12,000 left in my liquid savings. I should contribute. I want to pay my way." Brenda's eyes widened. Tiffany actually stopped looking at her phone. "12,000, Brenda repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. "Well, that is a good start. You can write me a check tomorrow." "I will," I promised. "But can I ask for one thing?" "A small thing." "What?" Tiffany asked suspiciously. "I want to cook dinner tonight," I said. "A real family dinner, roast chicken, wine, the works. I want to thank you both for saving me, for helping me see that my career was toxic. I feel like I'm finally waking up." Brenda beamed. It was the smile of a cult leader whose brainwashing had finally taken hold. "Oh, Jordan, that is beautiful. Of course, we would love that." I went to the grocery store with Tiffany's credit card, which she handed over with a warning to buy the store brand, and bought the ingredients. I also bought 3 bottles of Chardonnay. High alcohol content, oaky, sweet, just the way Brenda liked it. That evening, the house smelled of rosemary and garlic. I set the table with the good china. I fed the boys early and set them up with a movie in the basement so we would not be disturbed. When Brenda and Tiffany sat down, I was the picture of gratitude. I poured the wine. I poured it heavy. "To family," I toasted, raising my glass. "To family," Brenda echoed, taking a large gulp. We ate. I kept the conversation light. stroking their egos. I asked Tiffany about her trip. I asked Brenda about her garden. I waited until the second bottle was opened and Brenda's cheeks were flushed a deep crimson. Her guard was down. She was feeling powerful, adored, and victorious. "You know, Mom," I said, swirling the wine in my glass, "I have been thinking a lot about that phone call to Mr. Sterling. At first, I was angry, but now I am just impressed." Brenda giggled. "Impressed?" "Yes," I said, leaning in. "I mean, Mr. Sterling is the most terrifying man I know. He eats directors for breakfast. And yet, you convinced him. You completely manipulated him. How did you do it? I would have been shaking in my boots." Brenda waved a dismissive hand, but her chest puffed out. "Oh, please. Men like him are simple. They fear lawsuits and they fear scandal. You just have to push the right buttons." "But the medical terminology," I pressed, pouring more wine into her glass. "Maya told me you sounded like a real psychiatrist. Acute paranoia. Substance dependency. Where did you learn that?" "You sounded so educated." "Internet," Brenda declared proudly, slurring slightly. "I spent 3 hours on WebMD and Wikipedia the night before. I looked up symptoms of drug abuse in high-functioning executives. Did you know that mood swings and erratic behavior are the top 2? I just wrote a script." "A script?" I asked, widening my eyes in admiration. "You wrote a script?" "Of course," Brenda laughed. "I practiced in the mirror. I had to get the voice right. You know, that deep, serious doctor voice. 'Hello, Mr. Sterling. This is Dr. Arlene Thorne.'" She did the voice. It was the exact same voice from the video Hunter had sent me. But this time, it was live. It was clear. And it was directed right at me. Tiffany snorted into her wine glass. "It was hilarious. Mom called me right after. She was like, 'I think I just won an Oscar.'" "I should have," Brenda agreed. "When I told him you were a danger to the workplace, I could hear him panicking. I said, 'She is a ticking time bomb. Mr. Sterling, for the safety of your staff, remove her immediately.' And bam, he folded like a cheap suit." "That is incredible," I said softly. My hand was under the table, checking the phone in my pocket. The voice recorder app was running, the backup recorder, a small dictaphone I had bought at an electronics store and taped to the underside of the dining table before dinner, was also rolling. "So you never actually spoke to a doctor, you just became one." "I did what had to be done," Brenda proclaimed, slamming her hand on the table for emphasis. "I saved you from that life, Jordan, and look at you now, cooking dinner, being a part of the family. You are welcome." "Thank you, Mom," I said. "I really have no words." "Serves you right for acting so high and mighty all these years," Tiffany chimed in, picking at the chicken skin. "Thinking you were better than us just because you had a career. Now you know your place." I smiled. It was a genuine smile, though they misread the reason for it. "I certainly do." After dinner, Brenda and Tiffany were sluggish from the food and wine. They moved to the living room to watch reality TV. I insisted on cleaning up. "You guys relax," I said. "I will handle the dishes." "You are a saint." "Jordan," Brenda mumbled, her eyes already drooping. I cleared the table, retrieving the hidden recorder and slipping it into my pocket. I washed the dishes quickly. Then, I walked into the living room. Brenda was asleep in the recliner, snoring softly. Tiffany was awake but barely, scrolling on her phone. "Tiff," I said, "can I borrow your iPad? Hunter wants to show me something on his account, but his battery is dead." "Ugh, sure," Tiffany said, gesturing to the coffee table. "Passcode is 1234. Don't look at my photos." "I wouldn't dream of it," I said. I took the iPad into the kitchen, out of their line of sight. I didn't open Hunter's games. I opened iMessage. I knew Tiffany. She was incapable of keeping a secret. And she had a best friend named Jessica, whom she told absolutely everything. I scrolled back to the week before the Cabo trip, and there it was. Tiffany. "Mom is finally doing it. She is sabotaging Jordan's job. LOL. Jessica." No way. Is she crazy, Tiffany? Yeah, but I need her to do it. If Jordan loses her job, she has to babysit. That saves me $2,000 a month. I can finally pay off that credit card debt before David finds out. Jessica, how much do you owe now? Tiffany, $40,000. It is bad. Jess, I blew it all on online poker and that MLM scheme. David will divorce me if he knows. I kept scrolling. The messages got darker. Tiffany. But here's the real plan. Mom is broke too. She thinks Jordan is going to support her forever. But once Jordan is drained, Mom is going to have to sell her house. I am going to convince her to sign the power of attorney to me, just in case. Once the house is sold, I am taking the equity to clear my debts. We will put Mom in a state home. She is getting annoying anyway. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a snake eating a snake. Tiffany was not just an accomplice. She was a parasite waiting to consume her own host. Brenda thought she was the puppet master, controlling me and helping Tiffany. In reality, Tiffany was waiting for Brenda to fatten up the bank account before slaughtering her. I took photos of the screen with my phone. I exported the chat history and emailed it to a dummy account I had created. Then I deleted the email from the sent folder. I put the iPad back on the coffee table. Thanks, Tiff, I said. She grunted, not looking up. I went downstairs to the basement. I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress and put my headphones in. I played back the recording from dinner. I practiced in the mirror. Hello, Mr. Sterling. This is Dr. Arlene Thorne. It was crystal clear. Every word, every slur, every laugh. Then I looked at the screenshots of Tiffany's messages. I had enough to bury Brenda. I had enough to destroy Tiffany. But the beautiful part was the symmetry of it all. Tiffany was planning to betray Brenda. Brenda had betrayed me. I decided then and there that I would not warn Brenda about Tiffany's plan. Not yet. I would let the lawsuit hit them first. I would let them turn on each other. When the money ran out and the walls closed in, Tiffany would try to throw Brenda under the bus, and Brenda would realize that her golden child was actually a scorpion. I lay back on the pillow, staring at the ceiling. They wanted my $12,000. They could have it. It was a small price to pay for the front row seat to their annihilation. Family comes first, I whispered into the darkness, and you are going to be the first to fall. The conference room at Thorne Associates was quiet. Save for the rhythmic scratching of Marcus Thorne's fountain pen against legal pad paper, the view from the 30th floor offered a panoramic vista of the city. But my focus was entirely on the small digital device sitting in the center of the mahogany table. We had just finished listening to the recording of the dinner conversation. The voice of my mother, Brenda Loxley, boasting about impersonating a doctor, filled the room with a grotesque clarity. Marcus set his pen down. He did not smile. He did not look shocked. He looked like a surgeon who had just been handed a scalpel and a patient with a very clearly defined tumor. This is not just evidence, Jordan, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low, resonant baritone. This is a confession. It is admissible. It is corroborative. And combined with the video your nephew provided, it is devastating. So we have a case, I asked, though I already knew the answer. We have several, he corrected. Against Brenda Loxley, we are filing for defamation per se, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and fraud. We are also looking at potential criminal charges for the identity theft regarding the loan, though that is a matter for the district attorney. Against your sister, Tiffany, we are filing for civil conspiracy. Her text messages prove she was aware of the plot, encouraged it, and intended to profit from it. She is an accessory before and after the fact. Good, I said, feeling a cold, hard knot of satisfaction tighten in my chest. Burn them down. However, Marcus continued, opening a leather-bound folder, the domestic front is only half the battle. The real prize and the real leverage lies with Etheris Corp. He slid a document across the table toward me. It was thick, printed on heavy bond paper, and topped with the formidable letterhead of the firm. This is a formal legal notice of wrongful termination and breach of contract, Marcus explained. We are not suing them yet. We are notifying them that they have exposed themselves to massive liability. We are alleging that they terminated a high-level executive without due process, without an internal investigation, and without medical verification, based solely on a malicious third-party communication. We are attaching the transcript of Brenda's confession. We are effectively telling them that their CEO, Mr. Sterling, was duped by a suburban grandmother and that his negligence has cost you your livelihood. I read the document. The language was aggressive. It demanded the preservation of all electronic records, phone logs, and security footage. It was a declaration of war. Send it, I said. The courier dispatched the package at 9 a.m. on Thursday. According to my contacts in the building, loyalists I had cultivated over 5 years who were still shocked by my exit. The package arrived at the desk of the General Counsel at 10:30. By 10:45, the 42nd floor was in lockdown. The panic inside Ethers Corps must have been exquisite in the modern corporate world. Firing someone for a medical condition without proof is a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Firing someone based on a hoax is a public relations nightmare. But firing a director because the CEO has an ego problem and got played, that is a board-level crisis. I sat in Tiffany's living room, folding laundry, while my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was not a call. It was an email notification. Subject urgent. Settlement conference request. It had taken them less than 3 hours. I did not reply immediately. I let them sweat. I made lunch for the boys, grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, and listened to Brenda complain about the humidity. She had no idea that across town, a team of 20 lawyers was currently dissecting her Oscar-winning performance and realizing it was the most expensive phone call she had ever made. At 2 p.m, I drove to Marcus's office. We dialed into the conference call. Ms. Loxley, the voice of the General Counsel, a woman named Reynolds, was strained. Mr. Thorne, we have reviewed the materials you provided. We are deeply disturbed by the revelations regarding the nature of the call Mr. Sterling received. Disturbed is a mild word, Marcus cut in, his voice sharp. My client was escorted out of the building like a criminal. Her reputation was incinerated. Mr. Sterling failed to perform even the most basic verification. He did not ask for a drug test. He did not contact her listed emergency physician. He acted with reckless disregard for the truth. We understand your position, Reynolds said quickly. Mr. Sterling regrets the haste of his decision. He was acting under the belief that there was an immediate threat to workplace safety. A threat fabricated by a jealous relative, Marcus countered. A threat that a simple background check on the caller ID would have disproven. There was a silence on the line. I could hear papers shuffling. We would like to propose a resolution, Reynolds said. To avoid the unpleasantness of a public lawsuit, Ethers Corp is prepared to offer Ms. Loxley immediate reinstatement to her position as marketing director. We will treat the time away as paid administrative leave. In addition, we will offer a settlement of $100,000 for the emotional distress caused. $100,000. It was a lot of money, but it was not enough. I leaned toward the speakerphone. This is Jordan? Hello, Jordan, Reynolds said, her voice softening. We want you back. The team misses you. I have conditions, I said. Name them? First, I said, checking the list I had written on my hand. The settlement is $250,000, tax-free, structured as damages for personal injury to reputation. Done, Reynolds said instantly. That was too easy. I should have asked for more. Second, I continued, I want a formal written apology from Mr. Sterling, signed, not a form letter. I want him to acknowledge that there was no drug use, no behavioral issue, and that the termination was an error in judgment. Mr. Sterling struggles with apologies. Reynolds hesitated. But we can draft a statement from the office of the CEO. He signs it, I insisted. Or we go to trial, and I play the tape of my mother laughing at him for the jury. He will sign it, Reynolds agreed, her voice tight. And third, I said, arriving at the most critical point of my strategy, when I file my civil suit against Brenda Loxley for defamation, Aetheris Corp will provide an official affidavit confirming that her phone call was the sole and exclusive reason for my termination. I want the company to be my star witness. I want Mr. Sterling to be deposed if necessary. I want him to look her in the eye in a courtroom and tell a judge that she destroyed my career. There was a long pause. Asking a corporation to involve itself in a domestic legal dispute was rare. They usually ran from drama. Why, Reynolds asked, you have your reinstatement. You have your money. Why drag us into your family matter? Because, I said, my voice cold and devoid of emotion. She made you a weapon against me. Now I'm going to make you a weapon against her. If you want me back, if you want to avoid a wrongful termination suit that will make headlines in the Wall Street Journal, you will help me bury her. We will prepare the affidavit, Reynolds whispered. Then we have a deal, I said, but I will not be returning to the office immediately. I have some personal matters to conclude. I will return in 2 weeks. Until then, I remain on paid leave. Agreed. The call ended. I looked at Marcus. For the first time, he smiled. It was a shark's smile. That was brutal, he said admiringly. You effectively just turned your employer into your legal executioner. I am just getting started, I said. I left the law office and drove to the bank. It was 4 p.m. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the pavement. I walked into the branch where Brenda and I held the joint account. 3 days ago, under the intense pressure of the family intervention, I had transferred my remaining $12,000 into this account. Brenda had demanded it as a show of good faith, a contribution to the household. She believed that money was now hers to control. She had likely already mentally spent it on a down payment for a new car or perhaps a deposit for a cruise. I sat down in the cubicle of a personal banker named Steve. How can I help you, Ms. Loxley? Steve asked. I need to make a withdrawal, I said. From the joint account ending in 456. Certainly, Steve said, tapping on his keyboard. How much would you like to withdraw? All of it, I said. Every single cent. Steve looked up, surprised. You want to close the account? No, I corrected. Leave the account open. Just empty the balance. I want a cashier's check made out to the Children's Legal Defense Fund. Okay, Steve said. Just to verify, you are a signatory on this account. I am, I said, handing over my ID. And since I deposited the funds, I am entitled to withdraw them. That is correct, Steve confirmed. He processed the transaction. The printer whirred. Brenda had made a critical error. In her greed. She had insisted on a joint account so she could monitor my spending. But a joint account works both ways. Legally, the money belonged to both of us. If she spent it, I could not sue her for theft. But if I withdrew it, she could not stop me. Steve handed me the check. The balance on the receipt read $0.00. I walked out of the bank. I did not mail the check to the charity immediately. I placed it in my purse. I drove back to the house. The garage door opened, and I pulled the minivan in next to the Buick. I walked into the kitchen. Brenda was there, cooking something that smelled vaguely of burnt onions. She looked up, smiling. There you are, she chirped. I was just telling Tiffany that since you contributed that money to the account, we should probably look at booking a weekend trip to the winery. You know, to celebrate our new family dynamic. I was thinking of using the card linked to our joint account to pay for the deposit tonight. My heart did not skip a beat. I looked her dead in the eye. That sounds lovely. Mom, I said, you should definitely try to book it. I will, she said, stirring the pot. Oh, and Jordan, can you clean the gutters tomorrow? Tiffany says they are clogged. Sure, Mom, I said. Anything for family. She had no idea. She was going to swipe that card, and it was going to decline. She was going to check the balance, and she was going to see nothing, and she would not be able to say a word to me about it without admitting that she intended to spend my savings on herself. but that was just a minor inconvenience compared to what was coming. I went to my room in the basement. I opened my laptop and checked the tracking number on a package I had ordered. It was a specialized projector, small but powerful. It was scheduled to arrive on Friday, just in time for Brenda's 60th birthday party on Saturday. The stage was set, the lawsuit was drafted, the company was on my side, the money was gone. All that was left was the performance. Saturday arrived, wrapped in a suffocating layer of humidity, the kind that makes your skin feel too tight for your body. It was the day of Brenda's 60th birthday extravaganza, an event she had been planning with the meticulous intensity of a military invasion for the better part of 6 months. The venue was the Emerald Banquet Hall, a mid-range event space on the edge of town that smelled permanently of floor wax and reheated chicken cordon bleu. Brenda had insisted on a Golden Jubilee theme. The room was drowning in gold balloons, gold streamers, and gold tablecloths that were so reflective they hurt the eyes under the harsh fluorescent lighting. It looked less like a celebration of life and more like the inside of a cheap jewelry box. I was not a guest. My mother had made that distinction very clear at breakfast. While she and Tiffany spent the morning at a salon getting their hair sculpted into defying gravity, I was sent to the venue early to set up. And now that the party was in full swing, my role was defined not by blood relation, but by utility. I was wearing a plain black dress and sensible flats, blending in with the catering staff. "Jordan," Brenda's voice cut through the din of chatter and clinking silverware. She was sitting at the head table on a throne-like chair she had rented specifically for the occasion. She was wearing a sequined gold gown that was tight enough to cut off circulation. "The shrimp tower is looking empty. Do not embarrass me. Refill it and smile. For heaven's sake, you look like you are at a funeral." "Right away. Mom," I said, my voice smooth and obedient. I moved through the crowd with a silver tray, collecting empty glasses and napkins. The room was packed. Every aunt, uncle, cousin, and second cousin I had ever met was there. Brenda had cast a wide net, desperate to have an audience for her coronation. As I wove between the round tables, I felt the eyes on me. They were heavy, sticky glances filled with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. Brenda had done her groundwork well. The narrative had been planted, watered, and pruned to perfection. "That is her," I heard Aunt Linda whisper loudly to Uncle Bob near the buffet. "Poor thing. Brenda says she completely snapped at work. Drugs. Apparently. Can you imagine a director-level job? Just thrown away for a high—" "Shame," Uncle Bob grunted, chewing on a roll. "She always did think she was better than everyone else. Pride comes before the fall, eh?" "Brenda is a saint," Linda continued, shaking her head. "Taking her back in after she threatened them, I would have let her rot in the street. But that is Brenda, heart of gold." I kept walking, my face a mask of polite servitude. Inside, a cold fire was burning. Every whisper, every judgmental look, every shake of a head was fuel. They were looking at a drug addict, a failure, a charity case. They had no idea they were looking at the owner of the mortgage on the house they were all going to for the after-party. I reached the shrimp tower and began replenishing the ice. Tiffany appeared at my elbow. She was holding a glass of champagne, looking flushed and manic. "Jordan," she hissed, leaning in close so the guests wouldn't hear. "Make sure you keep the kids away from the cake table. Leo already tried to stick his finger in the frosting. I do not want a disaster before the photos." "I am watching them. Tiff," I said. "Good," she said, adjusting her diamond earrings. "By the way, did you transfer the rest of that money to Mom's account, the $12,000? "I took care of everything at the bank on Thursday," I said truthfully. "The transaction is complete," Tiffany beamed. It was a greedy, predatory smile. "Perfect, because I have big news." She turned away from me and clapped her hands for attention. The DJ, a bored-looking man named Gary, faded the music down. Everyone, listen up," Tiffany shouted, waving her glass. The room quieted down. All faces turned toward the golden child. I just wanted to make a quick announcement before Mom gives her speech, Tiffany said, her voice trembling with excitement. As you know, it has been a tough year for everyone, but thanks to the support of this amazing family, things are looking up, and because we believe in celebrating the wins, I just wanted to share that next week. I will be picking up my brand new white Range Rover. A ripple of applause went through the room. Brenda clapped the loudest, looking at Tiffany with adoration. "You deserve it, honey," Brenda shouted. I stood by the kitchen doors, clutching the empty silver tray. Tiffany was buying a luxury car with money she thought she had stolen from me. She had likely put a deposit down or signed the papers based on the assumption that the joint account was flush with cash. When that payment hit the bank on Monday, it was going to bounce so hard it would crack the pavement, but I did not interrupt. Not yet. Let them build the Tower of Babel. It would make the collapse so much more spectacular. The applause died down, and the spotlight shifted to the main event. Brenda stood up. She smoothed her dress, took the microphone from the DJ, and basked in the attention. She looked out at the sea of faces, her subjects, and her eyes welled up with practiced tears. "Thank you," she choked out. "Thank you all for being here. 60 years. It feels like a blink of an eye." She paused for effect. "You know, people ask me what my greatest accomplishment is. Is it my garden? Is it my volunteer work?" She laughed softly. "No, it is my family, my girls." She gestured to Tiffany, who blew her a kiss. Then, her gaze slid to me, standing in the shadows near the trash cans. "Even when the path is rocky," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a somber, pious tone. "Even when one of our flock loses their way, stumbles into darkness, makes choices that break a mother's heart, we do not turn our backs. We open our doors. We open our arms, because that is what family does. We forgive. We rehabilitate." The room murmured in agreement. Handkerchiefs were dabbed at eyes. She was publicly shaming me while painting herself as the Virgin Mary. It was masterful. It was disgusting. "I may not be rich in money," Brenda concluded, clutching her chest, "but I am rich in love. And I am so proud that I could provide a sanctuary for my daughter Jordan during her difficult transition. Jordan, honey, we love you. We are praying for your recovery." She held the microphone out toward me, expecting me to nod, or cry, or perhaps bow my head in shame. The room fell silent, waiting for the broken daughter to acknowledge the saintly mother. I set the silver tray down on a nearby table with a deliberate, metallic clang. I walked forward. I did not look down. I did not look at my shoes. I looked straight at Brenda. I walked up the 3 steps to the low stage. The crowd parted for me. Confused by my sudden confidence, I reached for the microphone. Brenda hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. But she could not refuse me in front of everyone without breaking character. She handed it over, her smile tight and warning. "Thank you, Mom," I said. My voice was steady, amplified clearly through the speakers. There was no tremor, no hesitation. "Jordan, what are you doing?" Brenda whispered through her teeth, barely moving her lips. I ignored her. I turned to the audience. "My mother is right," I said, addressing the room. "Family is everything, and truth is the foundation of any family. For Mom's 60th birthday, I wanted to give her something that truly reflects who she is, something that captures the depth of her love and the lengths she will go to for her children." Tiffany looked nervous. She took a step toward the stage. "Jordan, maybe we should cut the cake. I have prepared a special presentation," I announced. "A memoir, if you will." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I walked over to the AV cart where the DJ's laptop was connected to the massive projector screen behind the stage. The DJ looked at me, confused. "HDMI cable," I said. It was not a request. He handed it to me. I plugged it in. The screen flickered. The Golden Jubilee logo disappeared, replaced by the black mirroring screen of my phone. "Jordan, stop this," Brenda hissed, her voice rising in panic. She sensed the shift in the air. The predator in her smelled a trap. "This is not the time for your little projects." "It is the perfect time," I said. But I did not press play on the video. Not yet. The psychological weight of the moment needed an anchor. I reached into my other pocket, the deep pocket of my catering apron, and pulled out a thick, heavy manila envelope. It was sealed with red tape. It was not a birthday card. I walked back to the center of the stage, standing right next to Brenda. I placed the envelope on the table in front of her, right next to her 3-tiered birthday cake. The heavy thud it made against the wood was audible through the microphone I was still holding. "What is this?" Brenda asked, staring at the envelope. Her hands were starting to shake. "That," I said, my voice echoing in the silent hall, "is a court summons. You have been served." A gasp went through the room. It started in the front row and rippled back like a wave. Aunt Linda dropped her fork. "Served," Brenda laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Jordan, is this some kind of sick joke? Did the drugs make you hallucinate?" "Open it," I challenged. "I will do no such thing," Brenda snapped, trying to regain control. "Security. Someone get her off the stage. She is having an episode." "It is a lawsuit," I said, speaking over her, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "For defamation of character, for fraud, for identity theft, and for the malicious destruction of my employment." "You are lying," Tiffany shrieked from the floor, rushing toward the stage. "She is lying. She is high right now. Look at her eyes." "And," I continued, looking directly at the camera lens of the videographer Brenda had hired to record the night, "it is not just me suing you. Mom, the envelope also contains a notice from Etherius Corporation. They are suing you for tortious interference. You are going to lose the house. You are going to lose your pension. You are going to lose everything." Brenda's face went white. The makeup stood out in stark relief against her pale skin, making her look like a clown. "You ungrateful little brat," she whispered, the microphone picking up the venom in her voice. "After everything I did for you, I gave you life." "You took my life," I corrected. "You stole my career because you wanted a free babysitter. You told my boss I was on drugs because you wanted to remodel your roof." "Liar," Brenda screamed. She lunged for me, her composure shattering completely. "Prove it. You have no proof. It is your word against mine, and I am a respected woman in this community." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had worn in weeks. It was sharp, and cold, and terrifying. "I was hoping you would say that," I said. I looked back at the screen. My thumb hovered over the play button on my phone. "This is the part where you might want to sit down." "Mom," I said, "because the doctor is in." The room was deathly silent. The air was so thick you could choke on it. 300 people were holding their breath. Brenda stood frozen, her hand half raised to strike me, her eyes locked on the screen behind us. I pressed play. The silence in the banquet hall was shattered not by the video, but by the heavy double doors at the back of the room swinging open with a violent thud. The timing was so precise it felt cinematic. A man in a nondescript gray suit walked in. He did not look like a guest. He held a clipboard and scanned the room with the detached efficiency of a predator locating its prey. "Brenda Loxley, Tiffany Miller," his voice boomed, cutting through the stagnant air. Brenda, who had been staring at the screen in horror, whipped her head around. "Who are you? This is a private party." The man marched down the center aisle, ignoring the whispers that erupted in his wake. He walked straight up to the stage and thrust a stack of papers into Brenda's trembling hands, and then another stack into Tiffany's, who had frozen mid-stride on the stairs. "You have been served," the process server announced. "Civil suit for defamation, fraud, and emotional distress. Plaintiff Jordan Loxley." The room gasped again, a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the space. "And," the server added, looking at Tiffany, "civil conspiracy and financial fraud. Have a nice day." He turned and left as quickly as he had arrived. Brenda stared at the papers in her hand, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. This is absurd. You cannot sue your own mother. I just did, I said into the microphone. And now, for the evidence. I pressed the button. The massive screen behind us lit up. It was the video Hunter had taken. Brenda's face, 5 feet tall and in high definition, filled the wall. Yes, Mr. Sterling, the digital Brenda purred, her voice dripping with malicious glee. This is Dr. Arlene Thorne. I'm afraid the prognosis is quite severe. Methamphetamines trigger acute paranoia. The real Brenda let out a strangled cry. She tried to grab the laptop, but I had moved it out of reach. The video continued, showing her laughing, mocking me, and calling me Miss High and Mighty. Then, the audio shifted, the screen went black, and the clear, undeniable sound of our dinner conversation from 2 nights ago filled the room. The quality was studio perfect. I practiced in the mirror. I looked up symptoms on Wikipedia. She is a ticking time bomb. I saved you from that life. Jordan. Now get back in the kitchen. The guests were no longer whispering. They were staring at Brenda with open mouths, their eyes wide with shock and revulsion. The facade of the saintly, sacrificing mother was crumbling brick by brick, exposing the rot underneath. You monster, Aunt Linda said loudly from the front row. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. You told us she was sick. You told us she was a danger to herself. You lied to get her fired. I did it for her, Brenda stammered, backing away from the edge of the stage. It was an intervention. She needed to be home. She needed family. No, Mom, I said, my voice cutting over hers. You needed a servant, and Tiffany needed a bankroll. I tapped the screen again. The audio cut out, replaced by a slideshow of screenshots. The text messages between Tiffany and her friend Jessica. Tiffany. Mom is finally doing it. She is sabotaging Jordan's job. LOL. Tiffany. Once the house is sold, I am taking the equity to clear my debts. We will put Mom in a state home. She's getting annoying anyway. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and terrifying. Brenda stopped shaking. She turned slowly to look at Tiffany. Her face was a mask of betrayal so profound it almost looked comical. Tiffany, Brenda whispered, you were going to put me in a home. Tiffany's face had drained of all color. She looked from the screen to her mother, then to her husband, David, who was standing by the buffet table looking like he had just swallowed a lemon. Mom, no, it is fake. Jordan photoshopped it, Tiffany screamed, her voice cracking. She hacked my account. She is trying to tear us apart. It is dated 3 weeks ago, Tiffany, I said calmly, before I even lost my job. You were planning this all along. You used Mom to destroy me, and you were planning to destroy her the moment my money ran out. You little witch. Brenda shrieked, launching herself at Tiffany. She grabbed Tiffany's hair, and the two of them stumbled, a tangle of sequins and rage. David rushed forward to separate them, but the damage was done. The image of the perfect family was not just cracked, it was pulverized. I watched them for a moment, feeling a strange detachment. It was over. The truth was out. But I had one last nail for the coffin. Stop it, I commanded. My voice, amplified by the speakers, froze them in place. I have one more announcement, I said. Since you were all so concerned about my employment status, I looked out at the crowd. I am not unemployed. As of yesterday, I have been reinstated as the marketing director of Etherius Corp. In fact, I have been promoted to vice president of crisis management. My salary has doubled. Brenda looked up, her hair disheveled, hope flickering in her eyes. You got your job back? Oh, Jordan, thank God. That means you can withdraw the lawsuit. We can fix this. We can represent the family again. You have money. I do have money, I said. But you do not. I pulled out the receipt from the bank. That joint account you forced me to open, the one you were planning to use for your winery trip, it is empty. I withdrew every penny on Thursday. 0 balance. You are broke. Mom, and since you spent all your own money on this party to show off, I am guessing your mortgage check next week is going to bounce? Brenda scrambled for her purse on the table. She ripped out her phone and opened the banking app. Her fingers were shaking so hard she dropped the phone twice before unlocking it. She stared at the screen. A guttural sound escaped her throat. It was the sound of a woman watching her life evaporate. 0, she whispered. It is gone. It was never yours, I said. The murmurs in the room grew into a roar. People were standing up, picking up their purses, and walking out. Aunt Linda threw her napkin on the floor. Uncle Bob shook his head and turned his back on Brenda. The shame was palpable. It was a physical weight pressing down on the stage. Jordan, Brenda pleaded, tears streaming down her face, real tears this time. Tears of terror. Please, you cannot do this. I am your mother. I made a mistake, but we are family. Family forgives. Family does not frame their children for drug abuse. A deep, authoritative voice spoke from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, flanked by 2 security guards, was Mr. Sterling. He looked impeccable in a charcoal suit. He walked into the room with the air of a man who owned the very ground he stepped on. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He walked up to the stage. He did not look at me. He looked straight at Brenda. Mrs. Locksley, Sterling said, his voice cold as ice. I am James Sterling, CEO of Ethers Corp. I am here to confirm to these witnesses that you impersonated a medical professional and provided false information to my office with the malicious intent of terminating your daughter's employment. Brenda shrank back, terrified by the sheer presence of the man. She stammered. Your actions were not only morally reprehensible, but legally actionable, Sterling continued. Ethers Corp will be joining Ms. Locksley's lawsuit as a co-plaintiff. We take the disruption of our business very seriously. You will be hearing from our legal team regarding the damages to our corporate reputation. He turned to me then, and his expression softened slightly. He nodded. It was an apology and a salute all in one. Ms. Locksley, he said. The car is waiting. Thank you. Mr. Sterling? I said. I placed the microphone on the table. It rolled and hit the untouched birthday cake, smearing frosting on the tablecloth. I stepped down from the stage. Jordan, Brenda screamed. She grabbed her chest, her face contorting in pain. My heart. Oh God, my heart. I am having a heart attack. You are killing me. She collapsed onto the floor, staging a dramatic fall that would have made a soap opera actress cringe. Mom, Tiffany yelled, but she didn't move to help her. She just stood there, staring at the screen where her own treacherous texts were still displayed. I paused. I looked back at the woman lying on the stage amidst the gold balloons. I knew her medical history. Her heart was as strong as an ox. This was the final manipulation, the last desperate play for sympathy. Don't worry, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room without the microphone. I am sure Dr. Arlene Thorne can treat you. I turned my back on them. I walked down the aisle, past the stunned relatives, past the shrimp tower, past the wreckage of my former life. Mr. Sterling held the door open for me. I stepped out into the humid night air. It felt clean. It felt like freedom. Behind me, the chaos was just beginning. But for the first time in 28 years, it wasn't my mess to clean up. The fallout from the Golden Jubilee was not measured in tears or apologies. It was measured in billable hours. In the weeks following my departure from the banquet hall, the machinery of the legal system began to grind my mother and sister into dust. It was a slow, agonizing process, calibrated to strip them not just of their assets, but of their dignity. Marcus Thorne was merciless. He did not just file the initial lawsuit. He buried them in paperwork. Discovery requests, interrogatories, demands for production of documents. Each motion required a response. Each response required a lawyer. And lawyers, as Brenda and Tiffany were quickly discovering, did not work for familial love or IOS. They had hired a strip mall attorney named Harold, a man whose primary legal experience seemed to be handling minor traffic violations. Even Harold, with his polyester suits and desperate comb-over, charged $250 an hour. The first financial domino to fall was Tiffany. The screenshots I had displayed on the projector did more than just expose her plot to sell Brenda's house. They revealed her secret mountain of debt to her husband, David. David was a simple man, risk-averse and frugal. He had spent the last 5 years thinking they were saving for a vacation home. When he returned from the disastrous party, he did not scream. He simply logged into their shared computer and pulled the credit reports. He found the $40,000 in credit card debt Tiffany had hidden. He found the drained savings account. He found the loans she had taken out in his name. 3 days after the party, David filed for legal separation. He froze their joint assets to prevent Tiffany from doing any more damage. He moved into a hotel and took the boys with him, citing Tiffany's erratic and predatory behavior, as evidenced by the lawsuit. Tiffany was left in that beige suburban house with no income, no husband, no children, and a looming lawsuit that named her as a co-conspirator. She called Brenda for help, but Brenda was answering to a higher power, the bank. For years, my mother had been living a lie. She had used my rent payments, which were significantly higher than the market rate to cover the mortgage on her house and the minimum payments on her secret gambling debts. She had juggled credit cards like a circus performer, using one to pay off another, always counting on my steady stream of income to keep the balls in the air. When I stopped paying, gravity took over. The first missed mortgage payment went unnoticed. The second generated a polite letter. The third, which coincided with the filing of my lawsuit, triggered a notice of default. I knew this because I had hired a forensic accountant as part of my legal team. We were tracking every penny. "She is insolvent," Marcus told me during our weekly briefing. "Her liabilities exceed her assets by nearly $200,000, and that is before the damages we are asking for." Then came the sledgehammer. Ethirus Corp did not settle for a simple apology. Mr. Sterling, humiliated by the realization that he had been played by a suburban grandmother, unleashed the full fury of his corporate legal department. They filed a civil suit against Brenda for tortious interference with business relations and defamation of a corporate entity. The damages they sought were in the millions. It was a symbolic number. Of course, they knew she did not have millions, but the lawsuit served a strategic purpose. It scared off any decent lawyer Brenda might have tried to hire. No firm wanted to go up against a Fortune 500 legal team for a client who couldn't pay the retainer. Brenda was trapped. Her phone calls to me started as angry voicemails, screaming about how I was an ungrateful child. Then, as the reality of the foreclosure notice set in, the tone shifted. It was a Tuesday evening when my phone rang. I was sitting in my new office at Ethirus Corp, looking out over the city skyline. The view from the vice president's suite was spectacular. I looked at the caller ID. "Mom." I did not answer. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message 5 minutes later. "Jordan?" Brenda's voice was cracked and wet. She was crying. "Jordan, please pick up. They are going to take the house, my house, your childhood home. How can you let this happen? I know I made a mistake. But this is too much. I am your mother. We are blood. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I need money. Jordan, just enough to stop the foreclosure. Please, I am begging you." I saved the voicemail, then I forwarded it to Marcus. "Draft a response." I instructed him. "Remind her counsel that all communication must go through him, and tell them that any further direct contact will be considered harassment." I did not feel a pang of guilt. I felt a sense of mathematical correction. She had tried to destroy my livelihood to save her roof. Now, she was losing her roof because she had destroyed her safety net, to twist the knife further. I made a public move. The settlement money from Ethirus Corp, the $250,000, had hit my account. It was a significant sum. It could have bought a sports car or a luxury vacation. Instead, I called a press conference. It was a small affair, mostly industry trade journals, and a few local news outlets interested in the Ethirus wrongful termination scandal. "I want to make one thing clear," I told the reporters, standing at a podium in the company lobby. "This settlement was never about the money. It was about clearing my name and exposing the truth. I do not want to profit from the pain my family has caused. I held up a giant check. I am donating the entire settlement amount, $250,000, to the Children's Legal Defense Fund, I announced. Specifically, to a program that helps minors protect their financial identities from familial theft. The story ran the next day. Executive donates lawsuit winnings to fight financial abuse. It was a PR masterstroke, but more importantly, it was a message to Brenda. I did not need her money. I did not need the money she tried to steal from me. And by giving it away to orphans and victims, I deprived her of the ability to say I was greedy. She was the one being sued for fraud. I was the philanthropist. The noose tightened. The court granted our motion to freeze Brenda's assets pending the outcome of the trial. This meant she could not sell her car. She could not sell her jewelry. She could not access the little equity she had left in the house. She was cash poor and asset frozen. The creditors she had been hiding from the ones holding the debt for the renovations that were actually casino losses smelled blood. They descended on her. Collections agents began calling her house 20 times a day. Brenda tried to get a job. She applied at the local grocery store and the library. But in a small town, news travels fast. The video of her mocking me at the banquet had gone viral in our local community. Hunter, bless his heart, had forgotten to delete it from the cloud, and it had found its way onto a community Facebook page. No one wanted to hire the woman who faked being a doctor to get her own daughter fired. She was a pariah. Finally, the inevitable happened. The bank posted the foreclosure notice on the front door of the house on Elm Street. It was a bright red sticker, impossible to miss. Auction date September 15th. Brenda was given 30 days to vacate. I heard through the grapevine Aunt Linda, who had surprisingly become Team Jordan after the party, that Brenda was sleeping on a mattress in the living room because she had sold her bedroom set for cash before the asset freeze kicked in. She was living by candlelight to save on electricity. On the day of the auction, I did not go to the courthouse steps. That would have been too pedestrian. Instead, I sat in a conference room with my private wealth manager. "The LLC is set up?" I asked. "Yes, Ms. Loxley," he said. "Phoenix Properties and Management. Registered in Delaware, blind trust ownership. There is no way to trace it back to you publicly." "Good," I said. "And the max bid?" "We have authorized up to $400,000, he confirmed. "The starting bid is the remaining mortgage balance, which is $210,000. "Buy it," I said. The auction took place at 10 in the morning. My lawyer attended as the representative of Phoenix Properties. There were a few other bidders, house flippers looking for a cheap remodel, but the market was soft. At 10:45, my phone buzzed. Text from Marcus Dunn. "Closing price $235,000. You own the house." I leaned back in my chair. I owned it. I owned the walls that had witnessed 20 years of manipulation. I owned the kitchen where she had cooked the dinner while lying to my face. I owned the roof she had desperately wanted Tiffany to pay for, but I had no intention of living there. "What are your instructions for the property?" my manager asked. "Do we evict the current occupant immediately?" Technically, Brenda had a few days left before the sheriff would come to remove her. "No," I said slowly. "Send a property manager over, a stranger. Have them inform the occupant that the house has been sold to an investment firm." And then, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "Offer her a lease." My manager blinked. "A lease? Yes. Tell her she can stay. But she has to sign a standard rental agreement, month to month, market rate, which for a 4-bedroom house in that neighborhood is about $3,000 a month." "She cannot afford that," he pointed out. "She has no income." "I know," I said, "but offer it anyway. I want her to know that she is living in someone else's house. I want her to know she is a tenant, and when she inevitably cannot pay, I want to evict her through the proper legal channels, not as her daughter, but as her landlord." It was the ultimate reversal. She had treated me like a servant in my own home. Now, she would be a squatter in mine. The property manager went over that afternoon, Aunt Linda called me that night, breathless with gossip. "Jordan, you will not believe it," she said. "Some company bought Brenda's house. They told her she could stay if she pays rent. But she is broke. She is running around telling everyone that she is going to sue the new owners for harassment. She is completely delusional." "That is terrible," I said, my voice flat. "She called Tiffany," Linda continued, "but Tiffany's phone is disconnected. David cut her off. Brenda is all alone in that big house. Jordan, she has no power. She has no money. She is literally waiting for the sheriff to come throw her out." "It sounds like she is facing the consequences of her actions," I said. "It is sad," Linda said, though she didn't sound particularly sad. "She keeps saying, 'My daughter will fix this. My daughter has money.' She still thinks you are going to swoop in and save her." "The daughter she is talking about does not exist," I said. "That daughter died the day she walked out of Etherius Corp with a cardboard box." "Well," Linda sighed, "I just thought you should know. The sheriff is scheduled for Friday at noon." "Thanks, Linda." I hung up. I looked at the calendar. Friday, 3 days away. I opened my laptop and logged into the bank portal for Phoenix Properties. I saw the withdrawal for the house purchase. It was a lot of money, but it was an investment. I would renovate it after she was gone. I would rent it to a nice family, a family that actually loved each other. Brenda was not just financially ruined, she was erased. Her credit score was destroyed, her assets were seized, her reputation was in tatters, and soon, her physical address would be non-existent. She had wanted to be the matriarch of a dynasty. Instead, she was the captain of a sinking ship, and I was the ocean swallowing it whole. I closed the laptop. I had a meeting with the creative team for Project Horizon in 10 minutes. I checked my reflection in the dark screen. I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like a CEO. The bill had come due, and Brenda Loxley had been found insufficient funds. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and stale anxiety. It was a sterile, windowless box where lives were dismantled and reassembled according to the cold logic of the law. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my spine pressed against the hard wood of the chair, watching the woman who gave birth to me crumble. On the day of the trial, Brenda Loxley looked as though she had aged 10 years in the span of 10 days. The vibrant, domineering matriarch who had commanded the banquet hall in her gold sequins was gone. In her place sat a frail, hunched figure in a gray cardigan that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was limp and showing roots of steel gray. It was a performance. Of course, I knew that. Marcus knew that. Brenda was playing the role of the confused, elderly victim, the poor grandmother besieged by a vengeful corporate daughter. She dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue every time the judge looked her way. But the act was failing. The evidence we had presented over the last 2 days was insurmountable. The video of her mocking me, the recording of her admitting to the impersonation, the bank records showing the emptiness of the joint account. It painted a portrait not of a loving mother, but of a parasite. Marcus Thorne stood up for his closing argument. He buttoned his suit jacket, a slow, deliberate movement that drew every eye in the room. He walked to the center of the floor and turned to face the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice low and commanding, "the defense would have you believe that Brenda Loxley's actions were born out of a misguided sense of love. They argue that she only wanted to bring her family together, that she saw her daughter drowning in a high-pressure career and threw her a lifeline." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air for 5 seconds. "But let us look at the lifeline she threw," Marcus continued, his voice hardening. "She did not ask her daughter to come home. She did not offer emotional support. She executed a calculated criminal dismantling of her daughter's livelihood. She impersonated a doctor to inflict maximum professional damage. She fabricated a drug addiction to ensure her daughter would be unhireable. And why?" Marcus pointed a finger at Brenda. She shrank back in her chair. "Not for love," Marcus thundered. "For utility. She wanted a nanny. She wanted a servant. She wanted a financial host to attach herself to because she had squandered her own resources. This was not an act of maternal protection, it was an act of ownership. Brenda Loxley did not see Jordan as a person. She saw her as an asset, and when that asset tried to become independent, she tried to liquidate it. I watched Brenda. She was shaking her head frantically, mouthing the word no, but she refused to look at me. Then came the knife in the back. Tiffany was called to the stand. My sister looked equally disheveled, her designer clothes replaced by a nondescript blouse. She had been named as a co-defendant, but her lawyer had clearly advised her that her only hope for leniency was to distance herself from the mastermind. "Mrs. Miller?" Marcus asked her during cross-examination. "Did you encourage your mother to make the call to Atheris Corp?" Tiffany gripped the railing of the witness stand. Her knuckles were white. She looked at Brenda. Brenda looked back, her eyes pleading, begging for solidarity. Family comes first. Her eyes screamed. Tiffany looked away. "My mother is very controlling," Tiffany said, her voice trembling. "She told me she had a plan. She said Jordan needed to be humbled. I just went along with it because I was afraid of her. She manipulated me too. She told me if I didn't help her, she would cut me out of the will. I didn't want to hurt Jordan. Mom made me do it." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Brenda let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. "Tiffany!" she cried out, before her lawyer shushed her aggressively. The betrayal was absolute. The golden child, the one Brenda had protected and pampered and pitted against me for 3 decades, had just thrown her to the wolves to save her own skin. I felt a cold satisfaction. It was not happiness. It was the grim validation of a hypothesis I had held since I was 12 years old. There was no loyalty in this family. There was only leverage. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up. He was a middle-aged man with a stern face. "We find the defendant, Brenda Loxley, liable for defamation per se, tortious interference, and fraud," he read. "We find the defendant, Tiffany Miller, liable for civil conspiracy." The damages were read out. For lost wages, emotional distress, and punitive damages, Brenda was ordered to pay a sum that exceeded $400,000. Tiffany was hit with a judgment of $50,000. The judge, a woman with eyes like flint, looked down at Brenda over her spectacles. "Mrs. Loxley," the judge said, "in my 20 years on the bench, I have rarely seen a case of domestic malice this profound. You attempted to destroy your daughter's life for your own convenience. The court is freezing all remaining assets to satisfy this judgment immediately. This session is adjourned." The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. The courtroom cleared out slowly. I stayed in my seat until the crowd thinned. I needed to gather myself. I felt light, untethered, as if a heavy chain had been cut from my ankle. I walked out into the wide marble hallway. The afternoon light was streaming in through the high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Brenda was there. She was sitting on a wooden bench near the exit, alone. Her lawyer had already left, likely disgusted by the outcome and the lack of payment. Tiffany had fled the moment the verdict was read, not even glancing at her mother. Brenda looked up as I approached. Her face was ravaged. The mascara she had applied that morning was smeared in dark streaks down her cheeks. She looked small, defeated, but as I drew closer, I saw the spark of manipulation flicker back to life in her eyes. It was a reflex for her, like breathing. "Jordan," she croaked. She tried to stand up but faltered, sinking back onto the bench. "Jordan, wait." I stopped. I stood 5 feet away from her, close enough to hear her, far enough to be out of reach. "Are you happy?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and accusation. "You won. You destroyed us. Tiffany is gone. The house is gone. I have nothing. Is this what you wanted?" "I wanted to be left alone, Mom," I said calmly. "You were the one who started this war. I just finished it. I did it for us," she wailed, clutching her hands to her chest. Why can you not understand that I wanted the family to be together? I wanted you home. I wanted to help Tiffany. Is it a crime to love your children too much? Is it a crime to want to keep your flock safe?" I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a pathetic, lonely woman who had built a cage and called it a home. "It wasn't love, Mom," I said. My voice was not angry, it was clinical. "Love is supporting someone. Love is wanting them to succeed. What you did was not love. It was possession. You didn't want a daughter. You wanted a slave. You wanted a retirement plan. You wanted a punching bag to make yourself feel superior." "How can you say that?" she sobbed. "I am your mother." "You had the biological title," I corrected. "But you made a choice. You treated motherhood like a business. You invested in Tiffany because she was weak, and you could control her. You tried to break me because I was strong and I didn't need you. You had a chance to be a mother, Brenda. But you chose to be a bad boss instead. And like any bad boss, you eventually get fired." Brenda stared at me, her mouth agape. The truth of my words was hitting her like physical blows. "So what happens to me now?" she whispered. "I have nowhere to go. The sheriff is coming on Friday. I have no money. I am 60 years old. Jordan, are you really going to let me sleep on the street? Is that the kind of person you are?" This was her final card, the guilt trip, the appeal to my humanity. I reached into my purse. Brenda's eyes lit up. She thought I was reaching for my checkbook. She thought, despite everything, that she had found the crack in my armor. She thought I was going to write her a check and save her. Just like I always had. I pulled out a small, white card. I stepped forward and placed it in her trembling hand. She looked down at it. It was not a check. It was a business card. Shady Oaks State-Assisted Living Facility. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "I made a call," I said. "Since you have no assets and no income, you qualify for state aid. Shady Oaks has a bed open in the indigent ward. It is not the Ritz. You will have to share a room with 3 other women. The food is bland, but it is a roof, and it is safe." Brenda looked at the card with horror. "A nursing home, a state home. For poor people. Jordan, I cannot go there. I am Brenda Loxley." "Not anymore," I said. "Brenda Loxley was a woman who owned a home and had a family. You are just a ward of the state now." "I will not go," she hissed, crumpling the card. "Tiffany will help me. She was upset in court, but she will come back. She loves me. She is my golden girl." I sighed. I had debated whether to use the final weapon. But seeing her cling to that delusion, seeing her still try to elevate Tiffany above me even in her ruin, I knew I had to sever the last tendon. "Tiffany is not coming back, Mom," I said. "You do not know her like I do." Brenda spat. "Actually, I know her better," I said. I pulled out my phone. I opened the folder containing the screenshots of Tiffany's texts, the ones I had not shown in court, because they weren't relevant to the specific charges, but were entirely relevant to Brenda's soul. "Look," I said, holding the screen in front of her face. Brenda squinted through her tears. She read the text messages. "Tiffany, once the house is sold, I am taking the equity to clear my debts. We will put Mom in a state home. She is getting annoying anyway. She is a senile old bat." I swiped to the next one. "Tiffany, I can't wait until she kicks the bucket so I can stop pretending to listen to her boring stories." Brenda froze. She read the words over and over again. Her lips moved silently. Senile old bat, annoying, pretending. The color drained from her face completely. It was not the pale of fear, it was the gray of death. The light in her eyes, that stubborn, defiant spark, was extinguished. She realized then that the daughter she had sacrificed me for, the daughter she had worshipped, the daughter she had destroyed her own morality to protect, despised her. "She wrote this," Brenda whispered. Her voice was barely audible. "She wrote it 3 weeks ago," I said, "while you were planning to get me fired to help her. You were her pawn." "Mom, you were never the queen. You were just a useful idiot to her." Brenda dropped the business card. She didn't pick it up. She stared at the floor, her body sagging as if her skeleton had dissolved. She was completely, utterly alone. The silence in the hallway was deafening. "I have nobody," she breathed. "You have yourself," I said, "and that is exactly what you deserve." I turned around. "Jordan," she cried out one last time. It was a raw, primal sound. "Don't leave me. Please, I am afraid." I paused for a fraction of a second. A memory flashed in my mind, me at 7 years old, crying because I scraped my knee, and Brenda walking past me, telling me to stop being dramatic. Me at 16, winning an award, and Brenda asking why Tiffany didn't get one. Me at 28, walking out of my office with a box, and seeing her smile. I did not turn back. "Goodbye, Brenda," I said. I walked toward the heavy double doors of the courthouse. I pushed them open and stepped out into the city. The air was hot, but to me, it felt cool. The noise of the traffic sounded like music. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with oxygen that finally felt like it belonged to me. I checked my watch. I had a meeting with the renovation team for the house on Elm Street in an hour. I was going to paint the walls a bright, clean white. I was going to tear out the carpets. I was going to plant new flowers in the garden. I walked down the steps of the courthouse, my heels clicking a steady, confident rhythm on the concrete. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't look back at the woman sobbing on the bench. The story of Brenda Loxley was over. The story of Jordan Loxley was just beginning. And for the first time in my life, the pen was in my hand, and the page was beautifully, perfectly blank. 3 months is not a long time in the grand scheme of the universe, but in the timeline of a human life, it is enough to burn a forest down and watch the first green shoots rise from the ash. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass wall of my new office on the 45th floor of the Etheris Corp Tower. The view was different from here. It was higher, sharper, and the cars below looked like toys that could be swept away with a single breath. On my desk sat a brass nameplate that read, "Jordan Loxley, Vice President of Crisis Management." It was a title created specifically for me. After the reinstatement, Mr. Sterling had decided that anyone who could dismantle a personal reputation crisis with the surgical precision I had demonstrated deserved to handle the company's biggest problems. My salary had not just doubled, it had tripled. I now commanded a team of 30 specialists, and my calendar was managed by 3 assistants who treated my time as a non-renewable resource. I no longer lived in the cramped apartment in Silver Lake. I had moved into the Meridian, a penthouse suite in the city center, with a 24-hour doorman and a security system that required biometric scanning to access the elevator. It was a fortress of solitude. No one could knock on my door uninvited. No one could ambush me in the parking lot. The silence in my apartment was not lonely. It was expensive, and it tasted like victory. But victory, as I had learned, had a flavor that lingered. It was not sweet. It was metallic, like the taste of a key that locks a heavy door forever. I checked my watch. It was 2 p.m. on a Saturday. I had one final piece of business to conclude before I could truly say the past was buried. I took the elevator down to the garage, got into my new car, a sleek, black German sedan that smelled of fresh leather, and drove out of the city. I drove toward the suburbs, but not to the house on Elm Street. Not yet. I stopped at the Save-A-Lot grocery store on the edge of town. It was a budget market, the kind with flickering fluorescent lights and floors that always felt slightly sticky. I pulled a baseball cap low over my eyes and walked in. I found her in aisle 4, scanning items at register 3. Tiffany looked different. The highlights in her hair had grown out, leaving a harsh line of dark roots. Her manicure was gone, replaced by short, unpolished nails that looked chipped and worn. She was wearing a red polyester vest that was slightly too large for her, and she looked exhausted. "That will be $42.50, Tiffany said to the customer, her voice flat and robotic. "I have a coupon." The customer, an elderly woman with a sharp tongue, snapped, "You missed it. Are you blind?" "I am sorry, ma'am." Tiffany sighed, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Let me rescan it." "Hurry up," the woman grumbled. "Young people today, no work ethic." I watched from behind a display of canned beans. The irony was so potent, it was almost physical. Tiffany, who had spent her life looking down on service workers, who had treated nannies and waiters like furniture, was now standing on the other side of the counter. She was dealing with the rudeness, the entitlement, the aching feet, and the minimum wage that she used to mock. She looked miserable. She looked humbled. But mostly, she looked like a stranger. I did not approach her. I did not buy a pack of gum just to make her look at me. I simply watched for a minute, confirming that justice had been served not by a gavel, but by the relentless grind of reality. She was working to feed her children because she had no one left to exploit. It was a hard lesson, but it was the only one that would ever stick. I turned and walked out of the store. My next stop was a 20-minute drive away, to a neighborhood that had seen better days. The Shady Oaks facility was a drab, brick building surrounded by a chain-link fence. It was clean, but it was stark. It was the kind of place where people went to wait out the clock. I did not go inside. I parked across the street and lowered my window. I saw her in the courtyard. Brenda was sitting in a plastic lawn chair, wearing a faded floral dress I didn't recognize. She was staring at a patch of weeds pushing through the concrete. She was alone. Other residents were sitting in groups, playing cards or talking, but Brenda sat apart. The rumor mill had told me that she had been ostracized by the family. No one visited. Aunt Linda had dropped off a box of old clothes a month ago and hadn't returned. The shame of the trial, the public nature of her deception, and the loss of her status had turned her into a ghost. She looked smaller than I remembered. The fire that used to fuel her the rage, the ambition, the need to control had burned out, leaving only a shell. I wondered if she was thinking about the Golden Jubilee. I wondered if she was thinking about the lie she told Mr. Sterling. I wondered if she realized that the servant she had tried to crush was the only one who had ensured she had a bed to sleep in. However lumpy it might be, I put the car in gear. I did not feel the urge to go over there and yell at her. I did not feel the need to gloat. Seeing her there, stripping of her power, was closure enough. She was living in the reality she had created. I drove to the final destination. The house on Elm Street stood empty. The for sale sign in the yard had a sold sticker slapped across it diagonally. I had the keys in my pocket. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house smelled of fresh paint and emptiness. I had hired a crew to strip it down to the studs and rebuild the interior. The wallpaper Brenda loved was gone. The carpets were gone. The kitchen where she had hatched her plots was now a modern, white space with clean lines and no memories. I walked through the living room. It echoed with the sound of my heels. I stood in the spot where the dining table used to be, where I had recorded the confession. There were no ghosts here, just sunlight streaming through clean windows. I had bought the house to evict her. Yes, but I had also bought it to exorcise it. I walked to the kitchen counter where a folder was waiting. It contained the closing documents. I had sold the house to a young couple, a teacher and a firefighter, who were expecting their first child. I had sold it to them for $20,000 under the market value. I wanted good energy in this place. I wanted it to be a home again, not a stage for manipulation. I signed the papers. Jordan Loxley, owner. I left the keys on the counter. Goodbye, I whispered to the walls. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel nostalgic. I felt like I was walking out of a prison cell that I had finally realized was unlocked the whole time. I left the house and drove to the city park near the elementary school. It was a Saturday, and the playground was packed. I sat on a bench, hidden behind a large oak tree and a pair of oversized sunglasses. I waited. 10 minutes later, I saw them. David was there. He looked tired, but he was smiling. He was pushing the twins on the swings. Hunter was sitting on the grass nearby, reading a comic book. They looked okay. They looked safe. Hunter looked up and scanned the park. For a second, His eyes seemed to land on me. I held my breath. He was the one who had given me the video. He was the one who had saved me. I stood up and walked to the ice cream vendor cart parked on the path. 3 chocolate cones, I said to the vendor, and 1 coffee for the dad. I paid him $20. Take them over to that man and those 3 boys. Tell them it is a random act of kindness. The vendor smiled. You got it, lady. I watched as he walked over and handed the treats to David and the boys. David looked confused, looking around, but the boys just cheered and grabbed the ice cream. Hunter took his cone, but he didn't start eating immediately. He looked toward the oak tree again. He gave a small, almost imperceptible wave. I felt a lump form in my throat. I loved them. I would always love them, but I knew that if I stepped back into their lives, I would be stepping back into the orbit of Tiffany and Brenda. They would use the boys as leverage. They would use my love as a weapon, to protect myself, and to protect the boys from being used as pawns. I had to stay away. I had to be the mythical aunt who sent great Christmas presents but never appeared. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. But it was the healthiest. I turned and walked away before David could spot me. I drove back to the city as the sun began to set, painting the skyline in hues of purple and gold. I parked in the underground garage of the Meridian and took the private elevator up to my penthouse. As the doors slid shut and the lift began its smooth, silent ascent, my phone rang. The sound was jarring in the quiet space. I pulled it out of my purse. The screen lit up. Mom. It was the first time she had called in a month. She must have found a way to get access to a phone at the facility, or maybe she had borrowed one from a nurse. I stared at the name. My thumb hovered over the red button to decline. Then it hovered over the green button to answer. I could answer. I could hear her voice. She would probably beg. She would probably cry. She might even apologize, or try to guilt me again. She would say she was lonely. She would say she was dying. She would say family comes first. If I answered, I would be engaging. I would be acknowledging that she still had a line to me. If I blocked her, it would be an act of anger. It would show that she still affected me enough to necessitate a barrier. I did neither. I placed the phone on the railing of the elevator. I watched it ring. Mom, Mom, Mom. The ringing echoed in the small metal chamber. I stood with my hands clasped in front of me, watching the screen like it was a specimen in a jar. I let it ring until it stopped. The screen went black. The notification missed call appeared for a second, and then vanished into the history folder. I didn't feel a pang of guilt. I didn't feel the urge to call back. The cord was cut. The signal was dead. The elevator chimed softly. Penthouse level. The doors opened. My apartment lay before me. Spacious, quiet, and entirely mine. The city lights twinkled through the glass walls like a million applause hands. I picked up the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. I stepped out of the elevator and into my life. Family is important, I whispered to the empty air, the words tasting like sweet, cold water. But I am more important. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed this journey of justice and reclamation. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please leave a comment down below with your location and let's get a conversation started. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the Blue Payback channel, hitting that like button, and smashing the hype button to help this story reach more people who need a little reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply thriving. Stay strong.